Today's video was brought to you by Retail Me Not and their extension for Chrome and Firefox, guys. They help you save money by giving you coupons when you shop online at places like Best Buy, Papa John's, Amazon, all sorts of places you can save money on. And more importantly, if we get 100 downloads, guys, of their free extension, we will get an 8,000 gem giveaway courtesy of Retail Me Not. Check it out in the description down below. It's the Season 6 patch notes. And we are going to be going over this. This is probably going to take a while. I imagine this won't be any shorter than an hour. Maybe it will be, who knows. But we are going to talk about the changes, changes that matter, changes that don't matter, why they don't matter, etc. And we are going to, we're going to go all about it and get into this. So, Season 6, I don't know why it says 6. I guess 6.1 is the start of the season. So, 6.1 patch notes. Bum, bum, bum. We've got a whopping 1 new skin in this patch. It is the Vaporware Poseidon. Basically, he has a giant dinosaur as his ultimate. It's pretty cool, but like also, it's a skin. That's not what we're here to talk about today. Miscellaneous chest stuff. Who cares? Bada bing, bada boom. Project Olympus. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you've heard this a billion million times. Crossplay is coming to Smite in Season 6. That means that Xbox, Nintendo, and PCs are all going to be able to play together if you so desire. PlayStation, I am sorry, you're left out because Sony does not love you the way that the other platforms love their players. Sorry. We also have cross progression coming, which means that if you have Xbox account and a PlayStation account, and then you go make a Switch account, you'll be able to basically combine all those accounts together, and bada bing, bada boom, whichever account is your highest level is the one that you keep, and then all of your skins and everything from all of your other platforms will conglomerate and all come together, and there you go. You've got everything onto one big account, and then if you play on PC, you'll play on the same account that you're playing on your Xbox and your Switch and all that stuff, and everything will progress all with each other. The first actual change we have coming for us in Season 6 is a role queue. This is basically going to be you giving the system some information of the role you would prefer to play. It's going to be your top 2 roles. So you're like, I really like mid. I'd like to play mid, but I also like to play ADC. So you put mid and ADC as your 2 preferred roles. The system is not going to increase your queue time depending on your role, but that also means that a lot of the time you're still not going to get your role. It's going to do its best to kind of work with the system to put you in games of roles that you want, but it is not going to be like, okay, there's 10,000 mid players queuing right now and nobody else, so nobody gets queues. It's just going to queue just like normal, and you're just going to have to suck it up and you won't get your role. But every time progressively that you don't get your role, the game will make you a little bit more likely to get your role in the next game. So, you know, if you've had 4 games in a row that you don't get mid, well, you're a lot more likely in the 5th game to get that mid than you were in the 1st game. That's how role queue is going to work. It's going to be for normal and ranked conquest. As far as ranked goes for the next season, they wanted to do a bunch of stuff, and a lot of that stuff didn't happen. You can see right here, future rank changes tentatively. So we're doing a soft reset for ranked. That just means that your elo isn't completely reset to like somebody that's never played before. You're just getting either a little bit curved. So if you're like really had a rough season, you'll get curved a little bit up. If you had a really great season, you still get curved a little bit down. So basically, instead of the threshold being like this big, it's going to be like this big of a spread. So you're still going to have people at higher levels and whatnot in the elo department, but it's going to be a little bit more spread out. The ranked seasons are getting smaller. They're going to be about 2 months long now instead of basically like 3-4 months long. which means that the TP that you gain has been increased, so you'll get more TP for winning and whatnot. That way you can more rapidly go through the ranks because the seasons are going to be smaller, so you're going to have less time to progress through those ranks. So that's why that is happening. They're no longer doing out the God leaderboard thing. I guess they're no longer giving out gems and stuff for that. So, like, sorry for all those people that were getting gems and stuff from that. They're still going to have the loading frames for the Season 6. Everything else stays basically standard. But for the most part, ranked isn't changing at all. So basically over here was the stuff that they wanted to do with the Season 6, which was that you no longer play qualifier games. That's not happening. That's going to happen later in the season. They never got around to it for Season 6. And also showing MMR and having MMR-based leaderboards for Masters Plus players. That also was not happening. So basically all the changes that were planned for Season 6 are not happening in ranked, and those have been pushed back to presumably happening later in the season. It says tentatively scheduled for patch 6.5, which is the that'll be the 4th patch of Season 6. So basically 2 months away because they patch every 2 weeks. Cool beans. Season 5 team badges. The system is removed from the game. Okay, who cares? Whatever. Now for some actual gameplay stuff that does matter. Kill bounty adjustments. We're not going to get into all this math and stuff. If you really care for the math, here it is. You can pause if you're watching on YouTube, or you can pause if you're watching here on Twitch. Either way, we're not going to get into that. The important thing is that they are redoing the kill bounty adjustment, which basically means when you are behind right now, let's say you're 2 levels behind and you kill somebody 2 levels above you, right? You're getting more value out of that kill than somebody that's 2 levels above you killing you gets, okay? So what they're doing is the downward side of this formula is not getting changed. So if you're a level 12 and you kill a level 10 right now, you're going to get the same value out of that next season if you're a level 12 and you kill a level 10. What they are changing is that reverse side of that, where if you're a level 10 killing a level 12 right now, you're getting a bit of a bonus XP, a bit of bonus gold, stuff like that. And then the next season, you're going to get more of a bonus. This is a way of countering snowball. It's an anti-snowball measure. So as you fall behind in XP, if you can get a kill on the enemy team, you're going to get more value out of those kills than you are currently getting right now. So it's a way to try to bring people back into the game from getting snowballed on. We'll have to actually get into the game to see how much it really feels like it's affecting it. But here's all the formulas for all that good stuff. If you care for that, I'm not going to get into the math. In Conquest, there is a new objective. It is called the Totem. It is right over on the solo lane side of the map, right on the back side of the Fire Giant, directly in the middle of both the lanes. It is not a camp that fights back. It is just a neutral camp that sits there and doesn't do anything. So like if you hit it, it's not going to hit you back. When you kill it, it's going to give your team buffs. It's basically like a little itty bitty buff that you can provide out to your team. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it. Located behind Fire Giant, obviously the objective is neutral, not a boss monster. Starts with 300 health. The health increases by 250 every time somebody takes it. Base physical protections of 15, base magical protections of 10. It will spawn at 1 minute, and then it'll respawn exactly 1 minute after it is taken. And it despawns at the 15-minute marker, never to be taken again. So basically, you're not going to be able to get it 15 times in a game. So if you're really doing it like crazy, you're probably looking at doing it like 12, 13 times in a match total between the two teams. When you do it, it despawns, bada bing, bada boom. Other team can't get it. And your team gets the following buffs. 5% movement speed, 25 MP5, and plus 25 gold to each member of your team. It should be noted that this buff lasts for a minute, but it is around your towers. Okay? So this buff is not going onto each character on your team. This is an AoE effect around your towers. So if you're getting pushed under tower, you're going to be getting these effects. If you leave the tower, you continue to have them for 10 seconds upon leaving the tower. It's basically a way to give solo lanes something to do without them snowballing out of control with like a fire creep camp like they have in the past. 25 gold is a little bit nice. Let's presume your team gets it 10 times during the match. That would be a lot. That's 250 gold for every player, about 1,250 gold. It can have a decent impact on the game. I don't think that these buffs are going to be that big of a deal because they only affect you under your tower / the 10 seconds after you leave the tower. It's going to be helpful for like not having to leave the lane for mana. But if you're getting pushed under tower, let's be real, HP is probably going to be more of your problem than MP5. So you're still going to have to back anyway to get your HP back so you don't die under tower. So I think that the gold itself is actually going to end up being more beneficial. Like your team gets it a couple of times. You get your boots just a little bit earlier. You get, your item just a little bit earlier. That's going to be more impactful to me than I see this buff being for under the tower. So on the whole, not a super game changer, but it does make solo lane just a little bit less boring. Just one more thing for you to do over there. Minion spawn time. This isn't that big of a deal. Basically, right now, it takes 1.5 minutes for minions to spawn. They're just making minions spawn after a minute. That's all they're doing. 30 seconds left of downtime at the start of the game. Everything else remains the same. Now, into the biggest map change of the season. There's really only 2 map changes this season. One being that totem over in solo lane. 2 being the Gold Fury. There is now 3 types of Gold Furies. One Gold Fury is the regular Gold Fury, the one we all know of. Now there's 2 more, the Oni Gold Fury and the Primal Gold Fury. These Furies give less gold overall than the Gold Fury, but they do give side buffs that the Gold Fury does not. These buffs right now are going to be randomly chosen. So the Gold Fury will always spawn first. And then it will randomly choose between the Oni and the Primal for whatever spawns next. And then whichever one of those 2 spawns next, it'll then randomly choose between the other one and the Gold Fury, etc., etc. It's always randomly choosing between the 2 that it wasn't last time. So what do these do? The Oni Fury is going to give your next round of minion spawns a buff. You can see all of those things that it does here. This is, to be noted, not nearly as strong as a wave of fire creeps, but it does stack with fire creeps. So if you get this randomly, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You're going to have some buff minions pushing down the lanes, but like, who cares? But if you can time this correctly when you're pushing down for Phoenixes, and you put that bonus buff on top of them, it's going to be nice for pushing into Phoenixes and stuff. That's going to be its primary use. The other new Gold Fury, Primal Fury, is going to give your team a stacking buff. That's permanent, lasts for the rest of the match. You get 5% increased damage to jungle camps and bosses. So yes, this does affect future Gold Furies or Fire Giants. You will stack with that buff. And you just simply, your entire team gets that bonus damage to jungle camps and bosses. I don't think this one is going to be that important because with the way that the Gold Fury spawn being random between them, with the way that you're not super likely necessary to get every single Gold Fury, I don't know how important it's going to be to have an extra 5% damage, on the Fire Giant. We'll see. Like the Oni Fury's buff right here with this thing is super straightforward. Boom. Let's go get this when we got our fire creeps. Let's go shove down a Phoenix. Let's get it. This is more of just a, hey, we're doing a little bit more damage to creeps. You can get it up to 3 times, but the length of the game in order for you to get this 3 times would be a while. With the Gold Fury not respawning, until every 5 minutes, you'd have to randomly be getting this one on basically every single spawn. Plus, you'd have to be getting every single Gold Fury. You're basically looking at like the 30-minute marker. Like at the earliest, you could basically have a triple stack on this for 15%. So for the most part, you're probably never going to get there. And by the time that you do, it's probably not going to be super relevant. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. As we talked about earlier, These Furies give reduced rewards. They're not the Gold Fury. They still give gold and stuff, but less. Pyromancer, still Pyromancer. He didn't get changed. Bada bing, bada boom. But there is a little torch now that you can see, like, hey, the enemy team still has their Pyromancer. That's basically it. Okay? The Fire Giant is getting a little change. It's not that big of a deal. Looks like there's a lot of stuff. It's not that big. They're slightly buffing the buff that you get from the Enhanced Fire Giant. You can see that down here. They're making the Enhanced Fire Giant slightly harder to kill. He's got 1,000 more health, and then you can see that he's getting stronger down here. Like his buff, his power is increasing. He's doing more damage. His protections are increased. He's harder to kill. Cool. He's stronger, and he also has a new attack, which is actually an old attack in Smite. They have brought back his magma pools and put it into his skill rotations, which if you want to know his new rotation going on, there it is. It's all his rotations of what he's going to go through. But that's basically it with the Fire Giant. His buff's a little bit better. He's a bit stronger. If you have the plus damage buff, it probably won't be harder to kill him. It'll probably be easier to kill him. This is probably just a little like, hey, we're giving people buffs that make the Fire Giant easier to kill, so let's make it harder to kill, so it's basically the same hardness to kill. Other than that, don't stand in the magma. If you don't remember the magma, it kills people when you're not paying attention. It can do a lot of damage. It spawns 1 magma pool per player, so don't stand on top of each other. You're going to get a bunch of magma pools, and then you're going to proc a billion magma pools, and you're going to kill your hunter, and you're going to be sad. Okay? As far as the jungle goes, they're redoing a lot of the HPs in the jungle. The gist of this is that they want, the creeps to be slightly more tanky against magical characters. I guess none of the jungle camps had any baseline magical protections, so they're giving all the jungle camps baseline magical protections, and they want the camps to be harder to kill in the late game. So as you can see, basically every camp is going to have decreased base health, but then increased health per level. So as the game scales forward, these buffs will be a little bit harder to kill than they have been in the past, because they're getting more HP per level. So they're trying to basically just prevent the buffs from getting completely one-shot in the late stages of the game. Honestly, if you factor in that bonus damage you're getting from the gold, the new Primal Fury, it's probably going to be about the same one-shotting of those buffs. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And they added a little image to Towers and Phoenixes, so now you know when backdoor protections are on something, because it has like a little glow around the tower that's like, hey, it's like a little shield on it. Cool beans, right? Not bad, not bad, not bad. The one big change to these jungle camps I will mention is I think it's gonna really affect like supports trying to do camps more so than like the mid laners and the junglers. They're going to be just dandy and fine in clearing this. But, like, if you're building, like, a supporty character, it's going to, yeah, you're not really going to be soloing these buffs anymore. So, into the item balance of Season 6, shall we? Attacker's Blessing. They're giving it additional stacks. I'm going to kind of burn through these non-conquest changes because I don't have any important thing to say about them because I don't play not conquest. So my advice would be stupid. Apparently Attacker's Blessing was OP, so now it needs 100 stacks instead of 50. They increased the stacks on Defender's Blessing from 50 to 75 as well, but then they increased its stats, so it's a little bit better. Specialist Blessing, they once again increased the stacks required from 50 to 75, but they also gave it more MP5. And then now we're into the actual conquest changes. Okay, so before we burst anybody's bubble, there's basically no new items. There's no new relics. They barely touched the relics at all. They touched a fair amount of items, but nothing super hardcore. And they touched a fair amount of gods and really nothing that hardcore out of a couple things. You'll see what I'm saying. There is not that many changes that are huge. indies that are not one particular change, which is massive, but it's one singular thing. So, Warrior's Blessing increased the health and mana restored from 30 to 40, and they increased the evolved protections from 10 to 15. A lot of this patch you're going to see is hi-rez saying, we want warriors to be played again, and we want them back in the solo lane. You'll see that as a theme as we go through these, and that is exactly what Warrior's Blessing is doing, trying to make this viable back in the solo lane again. Is it going to be now? To be determined. Horrific Emblem is the only relic being touched in this patch, and it is being nerfed. They are decreasing the regular version and the upgraded version of this relic. So slow goes from 40 to 30, and the attack speed slow goes from 25 to 15. And then in the ranked up version, the slow is also decreased from 40 to 30. The attack speed will remain at 25%, but the decreased damage dealt buff goes from 20 to 15. And that's it. That is the only relic change. All this means for you out there in the world is for the supports that were picking up Horrific Emblem, you're probably not going to pick it up anymore. You're just going to go back to picking up your tier 2 sprints and call it a day in the gas pedal lane. Easy peasy. So here is the big change to Season 6. This is, in fact, the only big change going into Season 6. Everything else is fairly small cookies. This is the really big one. Elixir of Speed, also known as Potion of Boots, also known as Poots. This consumable will increase your movement speed by 18% permanently. But this effect does not stack with movement speed from boots or shoes. This effect will last X minutes. X minutes is literally the entire duration of the game. It lasts for 9999 seconds. This item is available only in Conquest game modes. What this effectively means is when you get to the end of the game, you will be selling your boots, buying this, so you don't lose any movement speed, but then you have a 6th item slot now in the ultra late game of Smite. That's what this means. It means that instead of having boots plus 5 items in Smite, you are now going to have the famed 6th slot item that you're finally going to be able to utilize in your builds to finish that last item that you wanted to throw in but just barely couldn't fill in because you had boots. My one concern with this, I like this because it's a big change, and I love big changes coming in for new seasons, but my one concern is how badly this may snowball. We had that previous snowball reducing effect with the kills earlier, but with this, I'm concerned about a team having like that, you know, that 10k gold lead that they do right now, right? And then because of that, now they've got a 6th item slot, which allows them to continue snowballing later into the game. That's my one concern. But outside of that, I think it's going to be fun to see the different items that people are picking up as their 6 slots. I do think this is going to benefit damage characters more than tanks. I think that getting your Oboe, your Deathbringer, your Rod of Tahuti, all of those things is going to be more beneficial than picking up, you know, your Spirit Robe and stuff like that. Okay, the only new item coming to the game, which is really not a new item, it's just kind of tiering up an item, is Doom Orb. Doom Orb is currently a tier 2 item with no tier 3. They are changing that. They are giving it a tier 3 now. The item is staying basically exactly the same. You've got Cursed Orb now as the tier 2. Same concept, magic power, mana, MP5 movement speed. Your passive does the same thing. You kill minions, you get movement speed, you get magical power. Doom Orb is just a super steroided out version of the current Doom Orb. 3,200 gold, but it gives 135 magical power, ton of mana, MP5, 6% movement speed. Same passive, you kill things, you get movement speed, and you get 6 magical power per stack, up to 5 times. So theoretically, it can give you 165 magical power. Just a big power stack-in item for you to come in with. But it is 3,200 gold. It'll be interesting. I think items like this, where they give a little bit of movement speed, may become very good in a meta where you don't need boots. In the ultra late game, when everybody's selling their boots and buying their 6 slot, I think that just having this little bit of bonus movement speed, 6%, 10% on top of your 18% from the potion is going to be pretty strong. We'll see how it goes, especially since we have so much leeway with builds. But basically, just imagine that Doom Orb has been doing some push-ups. That's what it is. Okay. Next up, real quick, we've got a nerf to Book of Thoth. The tier 2 Book of Souls, minus 10 power. Book of Thoth itself, they're decreasing its overall costs, but they're changing the way that the passive works, increasing the amount of mana converted to magical power from 3 to 6, so that is a buff. Increasing bonus mana conversion when evolved from 2 to 3, that's a buff. But the reason why it's an overall giant nerf is because the passive now only converts mana gained from items. That means that all of your passive mana on your character doesn't count. Your giant mana pool is not stacking Book of Thoth, and you're not getting any of the power from that. Long story short, in order to make Book of Thoth like equivocally worth it, you have to basically build 2 more high mana items in order to basically get it back to where it was. Basically, I don't think people are going to be building Book of Thoth anymore. They just made it so it's not even near as good as it was before. And if you want it to be, you have to build a bunch of other items that are basically doing the same thing. Plus, they nerfed the tier 2, which means it's way less attractive to start with the tier 2 Book of Thoth, which means I think we're going to see a lot of ban crofts coming out. A lot of ban crofts. On that same track, Soul Reaver is also getting a nerf. Basically, now when you hit people with Soul Reaver, they take that bonus damage. But now, if you subsequently hit them with another ability, you will only get 50% of the Soul Reaver effect. Prime example, Agni drops 4 bombs on you, plus his Flame Wave, all that stuff. After that first bomb hits you and does the bonus Soul Reaver damage, the rest of the bonus damage from Soul Reaver is only going to be 50% less effective. That effect of 50% less damage lasts on you for 3 seconds, and then you'll be hit for the full thing again. So basically, it lasts for the entire skill rotation because you're not going to be not getting hit for 3 seconds. So you get hit by 1 full Soul Reaver, and then you get hit by half Soul Reaver. So pretty big nerf to Soul Reaver. Obshard getting a little shift, plus 10 power, but plus 150 gold costs. Basically, Obshard is really strong, and there's no character that can't pick it up. So they're making it a little bit more costly, just so you have to think a little bit more about, do I get this? Do I get Spear of the Magus? Can I afford this right now? Do I get my pen right now? On the whole, Obshard's still fine. Feel free to pick it up all the time on your mages. Typhon's Fang is getting buffed. Another reason why I think Bancroft is going to become super meta is because Typhon's is getting buffed. They are increasing the magical lifesteal from 10% to 15%. That's more of a buff than it sounds like. You have to factor in that because of Typhon Fang's passive, the more lifesteal you have, the more lifesteal you have, and also the more power you have due to the nature of its passive. So you're actually getting more than 5% lifesteal with this 5% increase, and you're also getting an additional 20 magical power or something. So it's a pretty big buff, and if you pair that with how attractive Bancroft is looking now as a starter item, I think we might see quite a bit of Typhon's Fang coming back into the meta for mid laners as well. Can this push characters like Hades, Anubis over the line to where they get played more? Also possibly, we'll have to wait and see. Dynasty Plate Helm, increasing the magical power by 10. Long story short, nobody buys Dynasty Plate Helm anymore. Will 10 more magical power make people buy it? Probably not, but maybe it makes it just a little bit more attractive as a situational item if you're getting farmed in the early game and you're going against like a super heavy physical comp. But for the most part, don't think that change matters. Stone of Binding change, on the other hand, actually does matter. Increasing the magical power from 20 to 30, so just 10 magical power. It has a new passive, which is almost exactly the same passive. It does the exact same thing, but successfully hitting an enemy god with crowd control will place a debuff on the enemy's hit. So basically the way that it works right now is when you hit somebody, when you have the CC go off, it has like a circle around your character that like gives your team penetration. But if your team isn't actually in your area around you, they don't actually get the penetration buff. So like if you like blink Geb ult and then your team was out of range because you blink Geb ult, you actually didn't give them the Stone of Binding passive because they weren't in like the aura circle. So now the Stone of Binding effect will actually proc on the character's hit, making sure that you get the penetration effect on them. So for the most part, overall usage buff for Stone of Binding. That's all the magical changes to magical items. That's it. So mages, you got the short end of the stick at the start of Season 6. Y'all got nerfed. That's basically all that happened. Little nerfs, not big nerfs, little nerfs to your favorite items like Book of Thoth. Moving into physical items, it wouldn't be a new season of Smite if Malice didn't get a new passive, would it? They are changing the passives of Malice. Now it is going to be when you successfully get a critical hit, it subtracts 2 seconds from all of your abilities currently on cooldown, not including your ultimate ability, and it can proc every 5 seconds. This is going to be not so much an item for hunters that you're building in like a crit hunter build. This is going to be more of a assassin cooldown build where you factor in crit characters like Surket, possibly Nezha, stuff like that, where your abilities are critting, and because your ability crit, your ability has a lower cooldown to use your ability again, to use your ability to crit, to have your ability be a lower cooldown. You see what I'm saying there? So we'll see how it turns out, but it's looking like an assassin item more than anybody else. It kind of was an assassin item already, but it's staying in that kind of genre. Not really a hunter item. Speaking of hunter items, Poison Star getting nerfed, increasing the cost by 100 and decreasing the critical strike chance by 5% to 15%, not decreasing it by 15%. Oh my goodness, that'd be one heck of a nerf, wouldn't it? Poison Star looks a lot less attractive after this change, especially because a lot of people were picking up crit, like one crit item, and that one crit item was Poison Star. Expect to not see that happening anymore. If you're building crit builds, I don't hate the idea of Poison Star even with these changes, but I don't think crit builds are going to be super meta. As we move forward, you'll see why. Wind Demon getting a cost reduction of 100 makes Wind Demon a little bit more attractive. Poison Star loses crit, up in gold, down 100 gold. I'm kind of liking Wind Demon over Poison Star now. We'll see. What is a nice buff, though, now that we've nerfed some hunter items, what is a nice buff, though, is Oboe increased the power scaling on the passive from 50 to 60%. So Oboe does a proc effect on like every 4th auto. It does a base damage of like something pretty low, like 30. But then it scales, and the rest of the damage comes from your attack power. So currently it's taking half of your attack power and adds that to that proc damage chain lightning effect. In Season 6, it will take 60% of that value. Oboe is going to be very strong with this buff, especially considering in the ultra late game now, you have a 6th item slot open. It's going to let a lot of hunters go into very heavy power pen builds, not worry so much about attack speed, and then grab a 40% Oboe attack speed at the end of the game and get all of this bonus power that you have flowing into the Oboe, which now has a bonus damage on its passive, an extra 10%. It's going to be very strong. Power builds on hunters plus oboe. Very strong. Expect it. Expect it. Silver branch bow getting a buff from increasing your physical power to 20 to 30. Silver branch bow still sucks. Do not buy silver branch bow. Its passive is absolutely garbage. Don't buy it. Just pretend like it doesn't exist. Pretend like you never saw this. Its passive is garbage. Okay. Moving onward into other physical items, we have Runic Shield. They're increasing the health from 100 to 150. They're like, hey, nobody buys Runic Shield because everybody's too busy buying Ansile. Maybe this will get people to buy Runic Shield. Hint, hint, it probably won't. Runic Shield is still an okay situational item, but it's still not generically better than Ansile. But they are nerfing Ansile because they know that, and they're increasing its gold by 150. That gold cost increase on Ansile, to me, little to no effect on Ansile. The passive effect on it is what really makes it such a strong item for ganking and countering mages as an assassin. So still feel free to continue to do that. Now, this is probably the bigger physical item change, is going to be to the cudgel tree. It's a bit of a shift of identity of these items. The hammers are all going to be losing health, increasing in power. So they're becoming a little bit more offensive oriented compared to defensive. But there's one particular item that we need to talk about in this tree, so let's get to it. Tier 1 cudgel, you can see it, minus 50 health, but plus 5 power. Tier 2 shillelagh, minus 200 gold cost, plus 5 power. This tier 2 is very strong. Very, very strong. At 1300 gold, it gives you power, mana, and HP, plus you're going to be able to get 4 potions. This is going to be a very strong tier 2 item. And shillelagh branches out into Blackthorn Hammer, which I already think is an underutilized item in the meta right now, and they're buffing it. They're giving it 10 more physical power, and they're buffing the passive. Right now, the way the passive works is when you're above 50% mana, you get 10% cooldown, and when you're below it, you get MP5. They're changing the passive, so you get 10% cooldown as long as you're above 25% mana, and then you get the MP5 when you're below 25. So you're getting more cooldown in more situations. Blackthorn Hammer, guys, straight up is like a 2,000 gold cost item that is now going to give 35 power. It gives like 400 health, and it also gives like 400 mana. Plus, it gives the 10% cooldown. It is a super ridiculously stat-bloated item. Bloated item. They're leaning people into playing warriors again. This Blackthorn Hammer is going to be picked up a lot. I can see this getting picked up by legit assassins in the jungle just as a straight defensive item because it's still giving 35 power and 10% CDR. That's crazy. I don't know how to overstate this. Buy Blackthorn Hammer as soon as Season 6 comes out. Buy it. It's so good. Runeforged Hammer also getting a change. Increasing the physical power from 40 to 55, and then decreasing the health from 250 to 200. Also making Runeforged Hammer look like a better item for those hybrid builds as like a jungler. 55 power, you get bonus damage when you CC people. I'm looking at Robin to love something like this. Get a little bit tanky, a lot of damage, bonus damage on the fact that I'm CCing you when you're going to be CC'd because I'm slowing you and then I'm rooting you and then you're dead. Gonna be great. The hammer tree is looking statistically very strong. All of the hammers looking good, particularly Runeforged and Blackthorn. All right, moving into items that all classes can buy, not just physical and magical characters. We've got a Gauntlet of Thebes buff. They're increasing the base health from 200 to 275. Nobody picks up Gauntlet of Thebes right now because of the gold value amount you have to put into it. compared to the value that you get out of it as soon as it's finished is super garbage. It only becomes a relevant item once it's stacked, but it takes a long time to stack. By the time you finished it, you're maybe like out of the laning phase. You maybe are not getting waves all the time. I still don't even think with a 75 HP buff on this that it's going to be a relevant item, particularly because we're in a very aggressive support meta right now, and there's nothing in this patch that makes me think that the pressure and dual lane is going to be any less important. There was nothing in the patch that indicates to me that the snowball and dual lane is going to be lessened at all, which means I still expect to see characters like Fenrir, Nezha, and your very high clear characters over in dual lane in order to steal their purple buff, in order to snowball out of control. So I don't think Gauntlet of Themes is going to be relevant. A change that is a little bit more relevant is they're changing Stone of Gaia a little bit. What's up, Zimstar? They're increasing the MP5 on the tier 2. Who cares? No big deal. But what is a big deal is Stone of Gaia. One is reducing the internal cooldown. So Stone of Gaia right now can proc every minute. It's going to be able to proc every 45 seconds now. More importantly, the heal that you get from Stone of Gaia currently takes 10 seconds for you to get the entire heal. They'll be reducing that to 5 seconds, effectively doubling the health that you're getting per second for those 5 seconds, but keeping the overall health that you get the same. That means that when Stone of Gaia procs, it's going to be chunking you with heals. You're going to be getting big, vast amounts of health from this item, which I believe is going to bring it back into the meta situationally for when you're against characters that have those knockups, knockbacks, pulls, etc. That proc it. Shield of Regrowth, getting a small little buff here. Minus 100 gold cost, plus HP 5x5, plus MP 5x5. If it was an item you thought was good before, congratulations. Still the same. If you didn't like it beforehand, you're still not going to like it now. That's all there is to it. Spectral Armor, getting a pretty nice buff, actually. Increasing the physical protections by 10, so from 60 to 70. And decreasing the damage dealt to you from critical strikes from 60% to 50%. So Spectral Armor is the anti-crit item in Smite. It's the, oh my god, they have a Nezha, Mercury, and an ADC, and they're all building crit. I can't live through this. What do I do? You build Spectral Armor. But basically, they're like, well, if you're going to be going strictly an item that's anti-crit, it should be a little bit better at being anti-crit. So they make it so you take 10% less damage from those critical attacks, plus you get 10% more physical protections, just to take a little bit more damage, less damage from those crits as well. On the whole, I don't think you're ever going to have to bother with Spectral Armor, because I don't think anybody's going to be building that much crit. Particularly hunters aren't, so all of your crit is going to be coming from, like, assassins next season. It's what it's looking like. Look like your Circuits and your Mercury's, Nezhas and stuff. Hunter crit builds are not looking super attractive right now. Lono's Mask getting a little bit of a nerf. Right now, you get minus 20% damage dealt and minus 20% healing done if you buy Lono's. They're going to change those to be 25%. So you'll do 25% less damage and 25% less healing done. For the most part, Lono's Mask is the only relevant mask in Smite. The other ones all kind of suck. Boomba's is better typically as a tier 2 item than it is as a finished item. So it is what it is. And Rangda's Mask is getting a buff from 15% increased ability damage to 20%. Not super relevant in my opinion. Rangda's Mask is maybe fun when you're not playing super seriously, but the nature of it will never make it a good serious item. Boomba's Mask, they're increasing the physical power from 20 to 30 and increasing the magical power from 50 to 65. This is basically them saying, hey, we know how much you guys like buying the tier 2 Boomba's Mask. Do you want to maybe like buy the tier 3 mask sometime? I still don't think this change is going to really incline people to do that. They're still probably going to sit on the tier 2 Boomba's Mask for a very long time before they finish it. All right, that is all of the item changes, guys, coming into Season 6. That's it. So not a whole bunch of big changes, just lots of little stuff. Nothing super large. Moving in now to God changes. Basically, you're going to see the same type of theme, lots of little changes, but not a bunch of big overarching changes. Except for this one. All warriors in Season 6 will be getting plus 10 health. Broken. That's it. All of the warriors in Season 6 are getting plus 10 total health to their health pools, plus an additional 3 HP per level, just to make warriors a little bit more tanky. Yep. Shoutouts to the warrior meta. It ends up being 70 HP for all warriors by level 20. Yeah. They want you to play warriors again, but they also don't want you to play warriors that bad. All right. AMC is actually getting some buffs. Decreasing the cooldown on your swarm by 1 second at every single level. But more importantly, Honey, instead of costing 75 to 95 mana, will cost 60 mana at all ranks. That's actually a pretty nice change. Honey historically has been a mana consumer. This is going to give you a lot more leeway for spamming Honey, for getting off your wave clear and not really needing to worry about it. Very much a quality of life change for AMC. Anubis, getting a very nice change as well. Mummify's stun duration is going from 1.2 to 2 seconds to 1.6 to 2 seconds. So an extra 0.4 seconds, almost a full half a second on Anubis at level 1 on his stun. This means that you no longer need to continue to level Mummify in the early game to make sure you can get that extra stun duration to get your 3 and your ulti off in those full durations. Which means that you can put more points into like your 1 for bonus damage, stuff like that. It is going to make Anubis much better. It's a nice change for Gooby. This combined with the Typhon's change, combined with the Book of Thoth, nerf, I think we might start to see a bit of Goobies at the start of the next season. Gonna start to see some Goobies. Ao Kuang is getting a passive rework, kind of. So the way that Ao Kuang's passive works right now is if you hit somebody with your ulti and you eat them and you go up to the sky with them, and you can do it up to 3 times, you can get 3 stacks total, you would get 15 magical power per stack and 5% magical lifesteal per stack. They're changing that, so now it's every 20 seconds, Ao Kuang gets a stack of his sword. As long as you have a stack, your next non-ultimate ability deals damage to an enemy god, will consume a stack, which reduces the ability's cooldown by 2 seconds, and it will also heal Ao Kuang for 5% of his maximum health. Successfully executing an enemy god with King of the Eastern Seas will completely refresh your passive. So basically, your abilities, when you have that passive up, will heal you for 5% of your health, and it will lower the ability cooldown by 2 seconds. If you ulti somebody, you get 3 stacks of it, so your next 3 abilities will all do that, not including if you get a 20-second refresh stack on your passive. For all intents and purposes, very similar style of passive. This won't, I don't think, make Kuang better or worse. Pretty neutral trade for Ao Kuang on this. Pretty neutral. Now, what is a big change is Bacchus. Bacchus, honestly, probably getting the biggest buff out of all the gods going into Season 6. Bacchus can now use Chug at level 1 without putting any points into it. You will be able to stack your passive on Bacchus without leaving the fountain, and you do not get any of the effects of Chug without putting a point into it. So when you Chug normally on Bacchus, you get things like protections. You don't get any of those things. Okay? But what you do still get is you get the bonus effects on your 2 and 3. So your burp will, still be able to stun now. your body flop will still be able to slow people. And you still get all of the passive effects from drinking. So not the chug effects, but the effects that you get from being drunk, like bonus power, bonus damage reduction. You will get all of those at level 1, making you way tanky at level 1, giving you the bonus power for clearing the wave with your belly flop. Bacchus goes instantly overnight from being unplayable to being meta. Literally overnight, particularly because we're still going to be in an aggressive support meta. Bacchus is an aggressive support. They fixed his one weak spot, which means I expect to see lots and lots of Bacchus support coming out in Season 6. Next got up on the list, Bastet getting a small buff. Razor Whip scaling increased by 5%. And D-Claw, same thing they did with AMC, making it a flat 60 mana at all ranks instead of scaling up. Once again, I actually think the bigger change here for Bastet is this mana change. 5% scaling is nice. That's going to be nice in the end game, you know, for your damage. But the bigger change for longer points of the game is going to be that mana reduction on D-Claw. You're going to be able to use it more often for the slow. You're not going to have to be so worried about missing it because of how high the mana cost is. 60 mana is going to be nice for you on Bastet. Also makes a little bit more leeway in your builds. Like maybe I can get the Crusher first instead of Jotuns because I'm not quite as concerned about my mana. Stuff like that. Okay. Baron Samedi is the new Khepri of Smite, ladies and gentlemen. Baron is getting nerfed again. This fun fact of the day, completely unrelated to these patch notes, Baron Samedi, I do believe, is the most nerfed character in Smite's history. He has been nerfed more than any other character ever in Smite. Just thought that was a little fun fact for you guys. He is getting a double nerf here. His Consigned Spirits, decreasing the bonus healing based off of mixing health from 12.5% to 10%. And they are also decreasing the total health damage on life of the party from 15% to 10%. Basically, this is nerfing more so tanky build barons, more so than it is nerfing power build barons. This is very specifically aimed at like support barons, solo barons compared to mid barons, as they were getting more benefits from these effects than their damage built counterparts. Did Baron need this nerf? Honestly, probably not. I think Baron's in a pretty good spot. After this nerf, probably still playable, but just they keep tapping him, and I'm worried if they tap him one more time, Baron's going to actually be not so good. He's going to fall off. I think he's in a good middle of the ground spot, at least at high level ranked. I can't speak for, you know, other levels, but like at a Grandmaster's tier, he has not picked up that often. He's more of a, not a counter pick, but he's like a pocket pick of people that they really like to break out because they're super comfortable on him. Bologna is getting a buff, not a huge buff, just buffing Eagle's Rally, increasing the base damage at the start of the game from 100 to 140, and then slowly it doesn't increase until at the end of the game it still just does 500. Basically, they're like, hey, Bologna's ulti doesn't do like any damage. Why doesn't it do any damage? Let's make it do some damage. Is this going to help Bologna? Sure. Does it bring her back into the meta? Honestly, I think if anything's going to bring her back into the meta, it's the other warrior changes like hammer buffs and a little bit of the HP and the other stuff that probably helps her out in the long run more than, you know, 40 damage does at level 5. So we'll see. We'll see how she conglomerates with this little buff plus all the other little buffs. She might find a way back into the meta. Cabrakan is getting a quality of life change, which also happens to end up being a buff. Basically, if you've played Cabrakan, which I presume that nobody has, because nobody plays Cabrakan anymore, his ultimate has always been super weird, like really weird. And they've been changing the shape of it for a long time. And then they gave it this T shape where now it's like a really skinny T, and then it comes out to the sides. they have finally decided, screw it. Let's just make the whole thing get hit by the ulti. So now instead of having this really weird targeter on your ulti, you have this big blocky square, and anybody hit inside the big blocky square will take damage. That's it. Just easier to hit his ultimate now. Still does the exact same things. Nothing changes on the wall. Just easier to get the damage off. Camazot's getting a buff, but not like a super direct buff. They're making Vampire Bats, which is the buff that you get on your 2. If you use your Camazot's 2 on a jungle buff camp, the main part of the camp, not the side minions, the main camp, you get a buff which basically increases your lifesteal and stuff. And you can stack it like 3 times. They're increasing that duration by 90 seconds. Plus, if you die, you will no longer lose your stacks that you have on Vampire Bats. Basically, a little bit of help for Kama in the jungle. Also, a little bit of a new Camazot's player help. If you die, you don't lose all your stacks. It's not the end of the world. You can just walk back out and get them. So it's a quality of life buff, and also definitely oriented at the lower end players to make him a little bit more approachable. Now, a buff that I actually don't agree with. A lot of the changes in this patch I like. Even if I think, there's only really one crazy change with the boots. But outside of that, this is one of the only things I actually disagree with. They're buffing CERN pretty hard. Decreasing the cooldown on his ultimate from 100 seconds to 90 seconds. And increasing the damage on Bramble Blast, this is the big change, from 40 at the start to 60 at the start. Now you have to remember that Bramble Blast has that bleed effect that keeps proccing over and over and over again on it. It's also a root. CERN right now is super underrated. We're seeing like professional tier players start to pick him up more. Grandmaster players start to pick him up more. He's becoming very popular in the jungle. As well as ADC. I think as soon as this patch goes live, Cernanos is going to be a top tier ADC, and honestly, a pretty dang strong jungler as well on top of it. So that passive that he has makes him just a good jungle because he can clear the junk camps so fast. So fast. All right. Fafnir getting a buff. It's a weird buff though for Fafnir. You guys know how when you're playing support and you think to yourself, man, I wish I did more auto attack damage? So they're buffing Fafnir's auto attack damage and his dragon form. So instead of doing 20 to 40 damage, it is doing 20 to 60 damage. Still scales the same. So you're getting 20 more damage per tick at level 20. This doesn't help Fafnir as a support in the slightest. Not at all. And I don't think Fafnir has good enough clear to be really that good in other lanes, but it could make some pretty fun random solo lane Fafnir power builds maybe a little bit more fun. But outside of that, doesn't really help him. Hera getting a nerf. Only one nerf, but it's a nice nerf. Increased Argus's cooldown from 70 seconds to 90 seconds. How about that? That is a nice Hera change. Can you believe she has an ulti with a 70-second cooldown on a kit that reduces her ulti cooldown just by casting abilities? My goodness. That's a good change. I actually think that might put Hera in a pretty decent spot. Because without Hera's ultimate up, her kit actually isn't that amazing. It's not bad. Like, it's a fine kit. But now that that's nerfed, I actually think she's going to be in a pretty decent spot. So, Huncules getting the reverse effect. Instead of his ultimate being a 90-second cooldown, it's going to scale all the way down to 70 seconds as you rank it up at the end of the game by level 20. You get that 70-second boulder cooldown. So, game's going on longer. You're getting stronger. You can pick up more boulders faster. Congratulations. You've been working out, friend. I don't know how good Hercules is going to be still. He's not that good right now in Conquest. With the warrior changes, we'll have to play it by ear and see which of the warriors come back. Pretty straightforward on the warriors that are obviously going to be good. Warriors that are good now, like Erlang's, like, hey, I just have more HP now. Or like Vamana going like, cool beans. I have more items to choose from and I have more HP. Like, obviously they're going to be good. But the question is, will Hercules like be any good, you know? Isis getting an interesting set of buffs. They're increasing the range on her abilities. The range. So Dispel Magic has a really, really tiny range. They're increasing the distance of that from 40 to 55, so it's actually usable when somebody's not in melee range against you. And they're increasing the Circle of Protection range as well. That one doesn't seem really relevant at all. But the Spell Magic does. It means that you're going to be able to potentially, in a 1v1 fight, Dispel Magic somebody far away, which of course slows them and silences them, which maybe helps you set up your Spirit Ball a lot more easy instead of having to Spirit Ball to get close enough to use your Dispel Magic. King Arthur is getting a whole bunch of bug fixes. This is all bug fixes. Don't worry about it. Like, hey, things are breaking less with Arthur. Cool. Actual changes to his kit. They increase the energy gain from 1 to 2 per hit on Twin Cleave / Blade Storm. And then they decreased the range on Sundering Strike from 16 to 12. Overall, probably a little bit of a nerf here to Arthur, which is kind of weird. Also, one of these bug issues was also kind of a nerf right here. They fixed an issue where Excalibur's Fury could stun targets behind Arthur, which technically is a bug fix nerf in that regard. But on the whole, not really too much of a buff or a nerf, just kind of mostly bug fixes and then a couple itty-bitty changes that aren't going to change Arthur at all. So, Loki got the biggest nerf of the patch. Unironically, he really did. So let's talk about it. Everybody, you know, put your hands together. You know, your prayers were heard. Congratulations. The gods have listened. Loki is getting nerfed. He's getting double nerfed, actually. So, we're going to talk about the second one first because it's pretty straightforward. Removed the damage mitigation from Loki's stealth. A lot of people didn't even realize it, but when Loki went into stealth, he actually gained damage mitigations, so he was harder to kill while in stealth. This means that now he no longer has any of that nonsense, so when you raw snipe him and you're like, why didn't my raw snipe kill him? He was at half health, he should have died. Now he will in fact die. Now the bigger change that is a little bit more complicated is his progression of his auto attacks. Currently, Loki's progression on his autos is 1, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 1.5, and it's being changed to 0.75, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 1.5. So what does that mean? It means that while his first attack will go off a little bit faster, right? It's 0.75. It will also do less damage. The reason why that is a big nerf to Loki is because a big part of playing Loki is doing things like auto attack canceling. So you would do your, say, ulti, right? Auto attack, 3 auto attack, stealth auto attack, right? But now all of those autos are doing 0.75 scaling instead of 1 damage scaling. So all of those autos that you're canceling with, while those abilities are still going to do the same damage, the base damage behind the autos actually got nerfed. So you'll be taking less overall damage from those attacks as they hit you. That's why it's a big nerf. All of those 1 first hits that Loki's getting on you, every single one of those is now getting nerfed because of that attack progression change. Overall, pretty big nerf to Loki, which is good. It's good. Screw that character. He's not fun. He's not fun to play against. Little itty bitty buff for Osiris. They increased the base damage from 60 to 260 to 70 to 270 on Single Strike. And they did the same thing on Spirit Flail from 75 to 290 to 80 to 295. So 5 more damage on Spirit Flail, 10 more on Sickle Strike. Honestly, the 10 more damage on Sickle Strike is probably more crucial because it's like a 3-second cooldown ability, which means you're spamming it, which means, you know, if we assume you get 3 off in a fight, that's like 30 more damage. But for the most part, these buffs don't really mean anything for Osiris. Once again, he's a warrior. If he comes back into the meta, it's going to be a conglomeration of, okay, I do 10 more damage, I've got 10 more health, I'm going to build the tier 2 Shillelagh because it's so strong, etc. Pele got a nerf, but it's so weird that they keep doing this specific thing. They nerfed her passive again? They decreased the duration of the passive from 6 to 4 seconds, and they decreased the power from 2 per level to 1. And that's the only change that they made to her kit. Pele's passive was super crazy broken when she came out. It's true. But they keep nerfing it over and over and over and over again. And her passive is no longer the problem. Like, it's everything else about her kit, which they obviously don't want to touch. It's just weird that they keep nerfing her passive, which was once a problem, is long gone for being a particular issue. So, I guess she's the #1 most banned god in ranked, which that stat actually blew my mind. I cannot believe it wasn't Freya. To be noted, Freya did not get touched this patch. Fenrir didn't get touched. Erlang didn't get touched. Vamana doesn't get touched. None of those gods got touched. So, I'm surprised she's the #1 ban because Pele almost, I mean, she very rarely gets banned at the super top level of play, which obviously isn't indicative of, you know, everybody's gameplay experience of ranked and, you know, stuff. But at least in like Grandmasters, she is not a priority ban. You're looking more at like Freya, Fenrir, Kuzenbo, sometimes Hera, Uller, stuff like that are way more priority bans in the upper echelons of ranked. So, side story. Poseidon getting a really weird buff. Increased physical protections per level from 2.2 to 2.6. Apparently his scaling was so far down below every other mage. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? There you go. Alright. Thoth. Thoth is getting one of the biggest buffs this patch. One of his changes is going to kind of sound like a nerf, but it's actually a massive buff, and we will discuss it. Expect Thoth to be instantly one of the best mid gods in the game again. So let's go talk about it. We got a lot of changes coming in. Step 1, Hieroglyphic Assault. That is your 1 on Thoth. They are buffing it by 5 damage at every rank. Keep in mind, this ability procs 3 times, which means that he actually has a 15 damage increase on this ability at all ranks, because once again, procs 3 times. We're going to talk about the 2 afterwards, because it's going to be the hardest one to talk about. They're increasing your ulti scaling from 100% to 120%. So yes, one-shot Thoth ults are back in town. Keep in mind, they're increasing his scaling by 20% on his ulti, while simultaneously putting an item in the game, a consumable, that lets you take away your potions, which is going to let you buy an additional magical power item to utilize on your scaling. I just want everybody to think about that for a second for the ultra late game, okay? Just want everybody to consider how strong that's going to be. And now let's talk about Evade and Punish. Thoth's 2 will no longer stun anymore. Okay, that's the nerf. Instead, it will root the first god hit, and all other enemies hit will be slowed for 1.5 seconds for 30%. The root also lasts for 1.5 seconds. They're letting Evade and Punish once again pierce through players. Now, for those that didn't play back or remember back when Thoth came out, Thoth 2 originally pierced through players, and it also stunned everybody, and it was completely broken. So what they're doing is they're taking away the stun. They're saying the stun is too strong for CC, but they're going to let evade and punish go through in a line again and be able to pierce and hit multiple people. At least at a top level, letting evade and punish hit multiple people is incredibly strong. Like, ridiculously strong. Ridiculously strong. Because of how much damage he gets from this ability in a team fight. And at the range that he can use it from and hit multiple people. In corridors with that, plus it's going to slow you. Plus it roots somebody, plus you're going to get the extra 20% scaling on your ulti. Thoth is back in town, ladies and gentlemen, so freshen up on your Thoth play. He's going to be a prime mid laner going into Season 6. Zeus is getting a really, really weird set of changes. So let's talk about it. Easiest change, Aegis Assault. The cooldown is being increased. That is your shield throw, your 2 on Zeus, increasing the cooldown from 10 to 12. That's basically them saying, hey, you use your shield to land your chain lightning for free. We're tired of you landing your chain lightning for free. So now you have to actually maybe try to hit it because sometimes your shield won't be up. We'll talk about this in a second. Lightning Storm on the ulti. They're adjusting the damage. They're taking it down a flat 20 in the early game. So 120 to 100, but in the end game, they're actually buffing it by 20 damage, plus increasing the magical power scaling by 5%. So they're taking away a little bit of Zeus early game, but buffing Zeus's late game. And then we need to talk about the 3. Increasing the damage on detonate charge from 50 to 135 to 60 to 180. So increasing the damage of detonate. Increasing the magical power scaling from 18% to 25%. Okay? Once again, increasing the damage on detonate. But reducing the multiplication for each charge from 1 times damage, 2 times damage, 3 times damage to 1, 1.7, 2.4. The skinny on this change is that in the ultra late game with the increased scaling and stuff, this is going to do more damage. But in the earlier stages of the game, you should expect this to do less damage. Once again, Zeus is being nerfed in the early game and buffed in the later stages of the game. A lot of these Zeus changes were because of how strong Zeus is in non-conquest game modes. They're trying to make him a little bit more balanced in other game modes. So taking a little bit away from his early game and putting a little bit more on his late game. Also, of course, affects him in conquest. But for the most part, it's going to be interesting to see how late games go in Season 6 because of the changes with the boots pot. Snowballing of the team that's ahead should continue for longer, which means it should be harder to come back. But then they also did that kill thing, which makes it a little bit easier to come back. So it's going to be dependent on how exactly this all works out. But that's the last change, guys, for Season 6. That's it. That is the entirety of the Season 6 patch notes. All the items, all the changes, as you can see, there was not really any groundbreaking items, not really any groundbreaking gods, really not that many map changes. So the overall big thing changes to Season 6. You've got the 2 new Gold Furies, which will possibly affect the game pretty decently. You've got the Totem over in right lane, which I really don't think is going to have that big of an effect on the game, but it will make solo lane less boring. It'll give them something to do as players. And you have the biggest change, which is our consumable boots right down yonder, which we will find. There it is. This is the only truly game-changing change in Season 6 for me. And my one concern with it, as we mentioned before, is that point right now where players finish their builds and they finish leveling and they stop snowballing because they can't get any stronger, that point gets pushed back with the Elixir of Speed. That point where you can't get any stronger, because now you can buy that last item. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked the video, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you like the channel, go ahead and subscribe and ring that bell, guys, in order to get notifications for our uploads. If you want to go the extra mile to help support the Twitchiest community, you can always go to our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Incon and use your Twitch Prime sub there. It's a great way to help support the community. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a twitchin' day, y'all.